Hey guys, Dr. Mike Israetel here for Renaissance Periodization and Juggernaut Training Systems. Going to be talking to you about how to grow gigantic front delts. Mine are so enormous, I can barely even reach them. I don't think that made any sense. In any case, giant front delts. Here's something I'm going to say before getting into the actual guide. We have to make sure, from a physique standpoint, you don't have to if you want to be looking really wacky, I suppose. Most people who train from a physique perspective want to look very presentable. They want to look good. Even if they want to look freaky, there has to be a balance. A lot of individuals focus a ton on front delt development, and it turns out that in almost all of bodybuilding, taking the front delt and making it as big as possible while ignoring the side and rear delt just generally presents a pretty bad option as far as shape is concerned. The bodybuilding judges are looking for very well-developed rear and side delts. They almost never judge people on their front delts unless they're very small. And on that note, so the big point there is we're going to be training front delts as a focus very sparingly for two reasons. One, they're not super important to overall shoulder development because side delts and rear delts tend to be more lagging on more people and tend to be valued by just generally people who are pleased by aesthetic looks and bodybuilding judges. And secondly, and here's the really big deal, when you do a ton of pressing, your chest pressing, your various other tricep modified presses, skull crushers, any kind of chest work, especially incline work, every single time you use your chest, more or less, unless it's through a very interesting fly isolation, you're going to be using your front delts a lot. And not only are you going to be using them so that they add up fatigue, but you're also going to be stimulating quite a bit and getting quite a bit of hypertrophic effect from that. So if we combine the fact that front delts are almost never a really problem area for most people, and because most individuals already do some good bit of pressing volume, front delts are very rarely something we're going to put a ton of work into. But when we are going to put work into them, we'll follow this really quick guide for you guys. So on the note of front delts not needing a ton of volume, the maintenance volume, how much do you need to train your front delts to keep them about the same size over the long term, weeks and months, is approximately 0 sets a week. How does that give? Well, if you're doing, the caveat there is if you're doing your normal chest training for maintenance volumes, which we have in our chest video, which we can link up for you guys, then that's usually enough actual front delt work for the front delts to at least not have to have any more training. So if you're looking to really scale back on your programming, you're looking to do a maintenance and a recovery phase, drop your volume to resensitize your muscles for growth, every little bit you cut away of the program, as long as your muscles are still there and staying the same size with those cuts, that's better because it lowers your overall fatigue, it lowers your overall volume, it allows your body more rest and your joints more rest. So great news. If you need a month or two of real good healing and relaxation, you can take your elbows and your shoulders and save the crap out of them by taking your overhead pressing, in general the best movement for front delt development, just general front delt moves, you can take them to 0 and not really pay a huge price, probably no price at all. On that note, the MEV, minimum effective volume for front delts, is probably also 0, which is really kind of crazy, but for most individuals, unless of your particular genetics or training history is a little bit different than average, I would say for 80% of individuals, just doing your chest work and your pressing will make your front delts about as big as most individuals looking for a balanced and large physique will want. But on occasion, you can hit them for their own sake to make them bigger, especially if your chest, especially your upper chest is getting really big, if your side and rear delts are really big, if you have small front delts, it can leave a weird little divot in there. It's not super pleasing from the side posers. It seems to be something missing. Front delts do give your physique a very structured, powerful look, especially in front relaxed poses, etc. So if you want to train, the average training volume on top of a normal steady diet of pressing is going to be something between 6 to 8 sets of front delt work, which means mostly overhead presses. Overhead presses of various kinds, be they seated standing dumbbell presses, seated standing barbell presses, or even machine presses, are by far, they're the squat for the front delts. The squat to the quads, overhead presses are that for the front delts. And it doesn't really matter a ton for physique purposes which kind you use, but mostly for presses, maybe occasionally some front raises, about 6 to 8 sets a week. Not a ton. MRV, in the context of good developed chest training, probably about 12 sets a week. You're thinking to yourself, 12 sets a week, that's really not that much training. It's not, but consider this. If you're doing a ton of incline work, a ton of flat pressing work, it doesn't even have to be barbells, just dumbbells, even machine presses hit the front delts as well. So with that 12 MRV is a little bit illusory. That's 12 sets of direct work. After that, most people can't recover because you have to add so much indirect work in there, the total workload starts to get pretty high on us. Frequency for front delts is interesting. Throughout most of these videos, we've been recommending a frequency for most muscles between 2 and 4 times a week. Because muscles just don't grow for that long after training, you have to hit them over and over and over. For front delts, it's 1 to 2 times a week, and here's why. Especially for bigger, stronger lifters, overhead pressing takes a while to recover from. And bonus, every time you train your chest or other kind of pressing movements that's not overhead, it's not directly tied to the front delts, it still uses them and at the very least conserves them, if not gives them an additional bonus stimulus. So direct work for the front delts only has to occur once, maybe twice a week, and the other 1 or 2 or 3 workouts, you're going to be doing other kind of pressing that's still going to be hitting them. So while overhead direct work is 1 to 2 times a week, we got to remember that doesn't mean that the front delt muscle only experiences a stimulus just once or maybe even twice a week. Usually it's more than that because of all the other pressing volume. Generally speaking, for the intensity, we're looking at the 6 to 10 rep range. A lot of times for a lot of other muscles, I've said that there's a productive range above 10 reps, up to 20. Some muscles respond well to metabolite stimulation. What I found in most individuals that I've worked with and my scanning of other athletes, and myself included, is the front delts don't really grow a ton from burnout stuff, from high reps. They seem to be a muscle fiber that just, or a muscle construction type or whatever, that responds to heavy loading. Sets of 8 are like right in that meat and potatoes range a lot. Even sets of 6 work. I've seen people grow a lot from 5s on occasion. Anything above about 10 reps, 2 things tend to happen. 1, your delts just get tired and not much else happens. And another is your triceps start to tire out and they start to limit the movement instead of the front delts. So pretty heavy training is the core for front delts, 6 to 10 reps. Range of motion is critical. If you want to save your joints, your elbows especially, and also your shoulders, take whatever barbell, dumbbell, or machine all the way down for a deep stretch. Most people can touch the bar, if they're doing barbell presses, to their clavicles and push it all the way up overhead every single time. That allows you to use the smallest amount of weight to actually generate really good forces and especially really high workloads to keep the shoulder mobile and safe. And cool bonus, if you're used to overhead pressing through a full range of motion, you'll be much less susceptible to shoulder injuries and any kind of variety of sport moves because your shoulder has experienced that kind of stuff. Behind the neck pressing, which I don't recommend for most people unless it's a part of your sport, definitely don't go all the way down. Only go down until you feel a little bit unstable. But for front pressing and side pressing with dumbbells, deep is better and it'll do you a lot of good over time. For metabolite techniques, if you're the kind of individual that responds to metabolite training for front delts, I'm certainly not. A lot of people I know are not. Giant sets work really well. So that's when you set yourself a certain number of total reps to do. You set yourself an interval of rest, usually something like 30 seconds or a minute, and you do sets with a 30 seconds or a minute rest between until you get to that total number of reps. So for example, 40 or 50 reps. You say 50 reps of machine overhead presses. You do 12, you hit the clock, rest a minute, do another 10, hit the clock. Until all that adds up to 50, you don't stop. Pretty good way to get a lot of blood flow into the area, a lot of metabolite accumulation, but again, not very supersetty, etc., because I don't think the front delts benefit from that. If you are the kind of individual that benefits a lot from metabolic work for front delts, which you could very well be, trying some kind of superset of a front raise, and usually the way I do front raises if I do them is to start all the way at the bottom and go really high up for a full range of motion with the front delts, start with that and then superset into an overhead press of some kind. That will definitely beat you down if you do respond to metabolites in that regard. Periodization, very standard model from a physique perspective. You do moderate volumes for a block or a mesocycle or 2. You do high volumes for a mesocycle or 2, and then you get back to strength phase to resensitize for growth. That way, we keep gaining, we take a little break to make sure that we can gain again in the future, and we keep going up. Nothing too fancy in that regard. One last thing, just to reiterate. Remember, your triceps and your chest, super important to develop for that gigantic look. Even your side delts are super important. Make sure that chest training, tricep training, side and rear delt training are the preeminent parts of your program in that general geography of the body. The front delts will almost always take care of themselves for a long time. When you get to be much bigger, much stronger, you will find the time for overhead work directly to make sure to bring up your front delts. But my general advice is don't pay a ton of attention to them. Maybe every 2 or 3 mesocycles put in some overhead work as a bodybuilder. Outside of that, it's really a good idea to focus on other muscles. You don't want to be in the position where you have huge front delts, shoulder problems from overtraining them, plus chest, plus triceps, and very small side delts and very small rear delts, because then you really kind of put yourself into a high injury position and a position which you have to shovel your way out of a lot of work for the side delts and for the rear delts. I would prefer to see an athlete or a bodybuilder with very big side delts, very big rear delts, healthy shoulders, and the uphill battle, quote unquote, to get bigger front delts. That's super easy because overhead work, front raises if needed, work so well. Folks, thanks for tuning in. See you next time.